Real-world frames per second testing across 6 games. The 7600X3D delivers 92 to 98% of the 7800X3D's performance at $100 less. We calculate cost per frame to show when each makes sense. We ran both CPUs through 6 titles that span CPU-bound competitive shooters and GPU-heavy AAA games. All tests used an RTX 4070, DDR5 6000 CL30, and Windows 11 23H2 with latest BIOS and chipset drivers. Frame times were captured with PresentMon over 10-minute gameplay segments. Counter-Strike 2 showed the tightest margin. 487 frames per second average on the 7600X3D versus 503 frames per second on the 7800X3DE at 1080p low settings. That's a 3.3% gap. Both chips held 1% lows above 380 frames per second, which exceeds even 360 Hz refresh rates. Valorant delivered similar results, 6 to 12 frames per second versus 631 frames per second, a 3% delta. In practice, you're GPU bound the moment you enable any quality presets above low. The 7600X3D costs $249 MSRP. The 7800X3D sits at $349. Though street pricing fluctuates, that's a $100 gap. We calculated cost per frame by dividing CPU price by average frames per second across our 6-game suite. The 7600X3D averaged 279 frames per second across all titles. The 7800X3D hit 292 frames per second. That works out to $0.89 per frame for the 7600X3D versus $1.19 per frame for the 7800X3D. Framed differently, you're paying 34% more for 4.7% higher average frames per second. The value equation shifts if you already own high-end components. Pairing either CPU with an RTX 4090 at 4K makes both chips GPU-bound in SAPE titles. The extra 1 hun buys almost nothing, but at 1080p width. The 7800X3DE has 8 cores versus the 7600X3D's 6. If you stream to Twitch at 1080p60 with X264 medium, the 7800X3D maintains higher in-game frames per second under encoding load. We saw a 12-15% frame rate advantage when streaming Warzone at fast preset. The 7600X3D can handle streaming, but you'll need to use NVIDIA on your GPU or drop to a faster X264 preset to avoid frame drops. Blender, Premiere, and Compile workloads show similar patterns. The 7800X3D finishes renders 18-22% faster than the 7600X3D. If your workflow involves heavy multi-threaded tasks outside gaming, the extra cores justify the cost. But if you're building a pure gaming rig and rarely open OBS, or both CPUs ship with locked multipliers, but you can tune RAM and Infinity Fabric. We ran DDR5 6000 CL30 on both chips with Expo enabled. Pushing to DDR5 6400 CL30 added 2 to 3% frames per second in CPU-bound scenarios. Beyond 6400 MHz, stability drops and gains plateau. The 3D V-cache makes these chips less sensitive to RAM speed than non-X3D Ryzen parts. Curve Optimizer undervolting works on both. We applied a 20 all-core offset on the 7600X3D and 15 on the 7800X3D without stability issues. Temps dropped 6 to 8 degrees Celsius under load, and single-core boost clocks held longer before thermal throttling. This is free performance. If you're willing to spend 30 minutes stress testing, you can run a free. AMD committed to supporting AM5 through tweet. Both CPUs drop into the same B650, X670, or budget A620 boards. If you buy the 7600X3D today, you can upgrade to a hypothetical 9950X3D in 2 years without replacing your motherboard or RAM. The 7800X3D offers more headroom now, so you might not feel the need to upgrade as soon. Consider the total system cost. A 7600X3D build with an RTX 4070, 32 gigabytes DDR5 6000, and a B650 board costs around $1,250. Swapping to the 7800X3D pushes that to $1,350. If your monitor is 1080p 144Hz, the 7600X3D already maxes it out in most games. The 7800X3D makes sense if you're targeting 1080p. The 7600X3D delivers 92 to 98% of the 7800X3D's gaming performance at 71% of the cost. In 3 of 6 games, the gap is under 5%, imperceptible without an frames per second counter. The 7800X3D pulls ahead in CPU-heavy RPGs, streaming workloads, and future-proofing, but those advantages cost $100 you could reallocate to a better GPU or more storage. For pure gaming builds on $200 to $1,500 budgets, the 7600X3D is the value play. Pair it with an RTX 4070 or RX 7800 XT, save the $100, and you'll hit the same frame caps in esports titles and stay within 8% in AAA games. Choose the 7800 X3D if you stream, render, or want maximum frames per second. Build your free playbook for any GPU at betterfps.com/optimize.